Every year about this time, even if there's not a presidential election, politics is in the air. But especially this year, the media is saturated with 24-hour commentaries on the upcoming election, and discussion and debate are hot and heavy as voters ponder choices regarding issues and candidates for office that they will be making in the next couple of weeks. So this is an appropriate time to hear the somewhat rare political comments that Jesus makes in the gospel we have just heard. For these comments to make sense, we should try to understand the context and the political situation of the Jewish people at that time. The Jewish nation, or Palestine as it was officially called, had been under Roman rule since before the birth of Jesus. Luke recounts in his gospel that when Jesus was born, Augustus, later to be considered to be divine, was Caesar, which was Latin for emperor. But during most of Jesus' lifetime, the Caesar was Tiberius, and it was his image that would have been on the Roman coin used to pay the census tax. But before we get to that coin, let's review what we just heard today. Throughout the 21st and 22nd chapters of Matthew's gospel that we've been hearing these past few Sundays, Jesus was confronted by the chief priest and the elders of the people. But now the players change. It is the Pharisees and the Herodians who are plotting to entrap Jesus. This is a clear case of the ancient saying, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend." For the Pharisees and the Herodians were on opposite sides of the political spectrum. The Pharisees were religious purists devoted to observing the Torah's 613 commandments. They resented the Roman occupation of the land of Israel and vehemently opposed the annual census tax on every man, woman, and slave between the ages of 12 and 65 years old. The Herodians, on the other hand, were followers of the puppet king Herod, a Roman functionary who the Pharisees regarded as a traitor. The Herodians would have been staunch supporters of the census tax. Our gospel passage begins with some initial flattery and moves quickly to setting the trap. The question is posed, is it lawful to pay the census tax to Caesar or not? Jesus is aware of the malice behind the question and understands the challenge. If he said it was not lawful to pay the tax, he would anger the Roman officials. If he said it was in accord with the Torah, he would offend the ardent nationalists who hated everything about the Romans. Jesus answers by saying, "Show me the coin used to pay the temple tax." The denarius, which was the price of the census tax, would have been equivalent to a day's wage. It bore the image of Tiberius and the inscription, "Tiberius Caesar Augustus, son of the divine Augustus, high priest." Not only were the Pharisees disturbed by the attribution of divinity to Caesar, but they also considered possession of this graven image on the coin to be idolatrous. They went so far as to devise ways to pay the tax without possessing or handling the coin. It would be a scandal if a Pharisee produced this coin. But even if a Herodian in the group produced the coin, the Pharisees would still be shamed by the company they were keeping. In any case, the fact that someone in the group possessed and produced the coin was shameful, especially since they were in the temple precincts. Jesus' riposte to their challenge cuts deeply. But then he goes even further when he asks, "Whose head is this and whose inscription?" Their reply, "Caesar's," sets up Jesus' positive response. "Repay to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God." Both the Pharisees and the Herodians have been, as Shakespeare would say, hoisted on their own petard, for they have fallen into the very trap that they set for Jesus. Now, how does this all apply to us? I would like to suggest we have to look in both directions, to Caesar and to God. Fidelity to one's religious tradition and allegiance to secular powers is not only possible, but it is required of us. Jesus disputes with the religious authority of his time, and he will conclude in next Sunday's gospel with the greatest commandment about loving God with one's whole heart, mind, and soul, and loving one's neighbor as oneself. Humans, not coins, bear God's true image. As Genesis reminds us that we are made in the image and likeness of God, and we are called to reflect that image by the way in which we live. The 2nd century Bishop of Lyon, St. Irenaeus, proclaimed, "The glory of God is the human person fully alive." We must be the face of God in the world today, the face of compassion, healing, hope, and forgiveness. And in doing this, we can become the stewards of the earth and of all that it contains. In this way, we can render to God what is God's. But what about Caesar? Well, this past Thursday, October 15th, was the last day for my 6-month extension for paying my 2019 income taxes, so I am acutely aware of what being called to responsible citizenship means. But another concrete way to be a responsible citizen is to vote. So please, fulfill your responsibility and be an informed voter. Although many will try, there is no one who can tell you who you can or cannot vote for. I have heard from several parishioners who have been contacted by an organization called Catholic Vote, which tries to promote itself as speaking for the magisterium of the church. In fact, it is a lobbying group with a decided agenda. It does not speak for the Catholic Church. It is not as overt as a priest in the Midwest, who will remain nameless, with a huge online following, who has gone so far as to say, I quote, "You cannot vote for a Democrat and call yourself a Catholic." But I am here to tell you unequivocally, you can be Catholic and vote responsibly for anyone you choose. You can be Catholic and vote for a Democrat. You can be Catholic and vote for a Republican. You can be Catholic and vote for an independent. But I'm not saying this on my own. I'm saying this because this is what the American bishops have said. The United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, that's the bishops of the United States speaking for the Catholic Church in the United States, the USCCB, has issued the following directive to all of us. We strongly urge all parishioners to register, to become informed on key issues, and to vote. The Church does not support or oppose any candidate, but seeks to focus attention on the moral and human dimensions of issues. We do not authorize the distribution of partisan political materials on parish property. Did you hear that? The Church does not support or oppose any candidate, but seeks to focus attention on the moral and human issues facing us today. Sisters and brothers, be responsible, be informed, and vote. Be a responsible citizen and render to Caesar what is Caesar, but always, with your whole being, render to God what is God's.